Radio IQ and all of the wonderful programming that you find here at Radio IQ, radioiq.org.
And Nick, we are very happy here at Radio IQ to again partner with St. Francis Service Dogs during this fund drive. St. Francis provides professionally trained dogs to people with physical or developmental disabilities throughout Virginia, West Virginia, and North Carolina. They also help at facilities like courthouses and nursing homes. Select Puppy to Partner as your thank you gift, and part of your donation will support the important work of St. Francis Service Dogs. Support two great causes. Donate now at radioiq.org or text Radio IQ, all one word, to 51555, and you will be helping to support this wonderful service, Radio IQ, and another wonderful service provided by St. Francis.
That's right. It's everybody coming together and supporting, not only Radio IQ, but our partners there on that wonderful program. I know we did that in the spring and people loved it so much. So we're so thankful to partner again with St. Francis. And just wanted to shout out a few different people. One listener said balanced news reporting and good music. Another said love listening to both stations, but especially loves a little day music on our partner station, WVTF Music. That's the great thing about what we do here. We bring you news, we bring you music. All of that costs money, though. The programming has a very significant cost. We want to continue to bring it your way. Over 60% of our operating budget it comes from listeners like you. In other words, we just simply could not do this without your pledge of support. $5, $10, $15, $100, $200 one-time gift, whatever level is right for you. You can do that at radioiq.org. We have a grand prize again from Cardinal Bicycle and Roanoke. That is a new specialized Vidau or Como SL electric bike. If you want to get on that, you can do that right now at radioiq.org/public.
It's here and now. This note, we're coming up to leaf peeping season, and experts say in New England, all the rain this summer with some sun to dry it out is perfect for bright and beautiful colors. But if you're planning to go to Vermont, you might want to avoid Cloudland and Barber Hill roads in the town of Pomfret, population about 924. People who live there are fed up with social media tourists who descend like crows. Thousands come to take selfies in front of the iconic Sleepy Hollow farm, posting them on TikTok and Instagram, bringing thousands more people, causing traffic jams, blocking driveways, fire trucks, ambulances. And these people are urinating. Lovely. On private property. So the Pomfret Select Board voted unanimously to block the roads for non-residents from September 23rd to October 15th. It's a trial. They'll reassess for next year. But for now, please, no Flatlanders welcome. Okay, there are dog people, there are cat people, and in Colorado, a growing number of yak people. The shaggy cattle are typically found in the Himalayas, but also do well in the Rocky Mountains. Colorado Public Radio's Stina Sieg spoke to a family of yak ranchers in the small town of Ridgeway about how they came to share their lives with these bovines.
Imagine the love child of a cow and a woolly mammoth. Yaks are very cute, very hairy, and pretty quiet. Mostly. This ranch, Smiling Buddha Yaks, is home to about 30 or so mamas, babies, and bulls. Some named after Hindu figures, some not.
Tara, Audrey, Billie Holiday.
Namgya Sherpa loves to look out on the herd, lounging in rugged pasture, craggy mountain peaks in the distance.
If you have a bad day or something, and if you see those little one, and then, it's like a kind of meditation for you.
Namgya is helping brush out the adults, including Sita, with a big white mop of fur flopped over her eyes under U-shaped horns.
You're a pretty girl, Sita.
Namgya's adopted parents, Ruth Higdon and Peter Hackett, the owners of the ranch, pat the yak's black and white shag carpet of a body.
Look at that, how fluffy that coat is now instead of matted.
With a long skirt that almost hits the ground. The ranch is about a decade old, but its origins go back to the 1970s, when Peter was a volunteer doctor in Nepal. He saw how enmeshed yaks were in Sherpa life, used to transport goods and people, used to make rope, even dairy products.
So I was just totally entranced by the culture and the relationship with this animal.
Peter opened a clinic in Nepal, in Namgya's hometown.
Very small town, maybe less than 10 houses.
And in that village, there was a Sherpa couple, Mingma and Namdu, that had 3 kids.
Namgya and his sisters.
And I was helping them out with clothes and things. I bring it over from the States when I go back and forth.
Then, in 1981, the kids lost both their parents in the same summer.
He was a good friend with my parents, and after my parents passed away, then he kind of helped us to go to school.
Go to school in Nepal. Eventually, though, Peter helped all 3 come to the U.S.
He did everything for us.
In the decades that followed, Peter found part of his heart was still in Nepal and with its signature animal.
I'd always go to see yaks at any zoo I went to.
Then one day, when Peter was visiting Alaska, he and Ruth found each other.
We met her on Denali at 12,000 feet.
He was coming down, she was going up.
Kind of meant to be, I guess you could say. Fated.
Ruth, also a doctor, had also spent time in Nepal and had also fallen hard for yaks. At the time, she was running a business where she'd hike into the wilderness with clients, with yaks as their calm companions and pack animals, more nimble than cows and far hardier.
Just loved walking with the yaks. It's just a really special experience.
And then she fell hard for Peter, too, with one condition.
I said, I have to have yaks, so we found some.
At first,
Peter was going, what? But he was all for it.
now it's their life. Smiling Buddha Yaks is one of dozens of yak ranches across Colorado. While some focus on the animal's rich milk and lean meat, here it's all about breeding, making fluffy, fuzzy babies that look as much like teddy bears as calves. After the moms are brushed, they lumber and sprint away with their babes into the sweet shade of scrub oak.
Well, I certainly never would have guessed I'd end up here, but it all kind of makes sense as a natural progression.
For Peter, Ruth, and Namgya.
I love it.
While his sisters have opted for lives in cities, Namgya wants to stay right here with his wife and son.
It feels like back home, Nepal, you know, and yeah.
At home in the mountains, at home with the yaks. For Here and Now, I'm Stina Sieg in Ridgeway, Colorado.
And that's it for this hour. So glad you were here. Here and Now is a production of NPR and WBUR. I'm Robin Young in Boston.
And I'm Scott Tong in Washington, D.C. This is Here and Now.
Good evening, everybody. The September 18th, 2023 session of Roanoke City Council is hereby called to order, and I am delighted to see our clerk, Ms. Susan McCoy, and I'll ask her to please call the roll.
All right, I will. Mr. Vollison.
Here.
Ms. Moon Reynolds.
Here.
Ms. Sanchez Jones.
Here.
Mr. Pretty is absent today. Vice Mayor Cobb.
Here.
Ms. White Boyd is absent today. And Mayor Lee.
Here. Thank you, and quorum is present. Today, well, let me just say this. The council meetings will be televised live and replayed on RVTV Channel 3 on Thursdays at 7 o'clock p.m. and Saturdays from 10 a.m. to 5 o'clock p.m. and video streamed through Facebook Live at facebook.com/Roanoke, Virginia. Council meetings are offered with closed captioning for the deaf or hard of hearing. All right, today our invocation will be delivered by Minister Lita Sapp. All right, thank you. And she's the Associate Minister of Not Forgiven Ministries. And following her invocation, I will lead you in a pledge of allegiance. So would you please stand for Minister Sapp?
Let us bow our heads. Lord, we come to you for prayer for this council meeting. Give the council members wisdom and guidance as they deliberate on the items before them today. May every decision be righteous in your sight and for our people and for your glory. In the name of Jesus Christ, our Savior and Lord. Amen.
Amen. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you, Minister. Thank you very much. Welcome, everybody. And we first want to share some announcements with you. The Council of the City of Roanoke is seeking applications for various vacancies on council-appointed authorities, boards, commissions, and committees. And again, as we say at all of our meetings, that we encourage you to apply for an appointment on our boards and committees. We need your input. It's an easy process. All you need to do is to access the city's website at www.roanokeva.gov to complete an online application, or call the clerk's office, and they will walk you through that process. But we look forward to having you apply and work with us on the boards and committees in this city. All right, the first order of business is presentations and acknowledgments. We're proclaiming and declaring a proclamation to declare September 15th through October 15th as Hispanic and Latinx Heritage Month. And I'm going to ask Councilmember Vivian Sanchez Jones to go down to the podium and make a special presentation.
Hispanic and Latinx Heritage Month. Whereas each year, the United States observes National Hispanic Heritage Month by celebrating the culture, heritage, and countless contributions of those whose ancestors were indigenous to the Americas, as well as those who came from all corners of the world, including North, Central, and South America, the Caribbean, Africa, the Philippines, and Spain. Whereas what began in 1968 as a Hispanic Heritage Week under President Johnson and was expanded by President Reagan in 1988 to cover over a 30-day period starting on September 15 and ending on October 15. Whereas this year's theme, Esperanza, a celebration of Hispanic heritage and hope, invites us to celebrate Hispanic heritage and to reflect on how great our tomorrow can be if we hold on to our resilience and hope. Whereas Hispanic and Latinx individuals serve as civil rights leaders, community organizers, politicians, soldiers, educators, journalists, first responders, pioneers in art and science, healthcare professionals, athletes, inventors, and entertainers, and so much more. And whereas Hispanic and Latinx individuals continue the rich history of significant and diverse contributions to the cultural, educational, economic, and political vitality of our community. Now, therefore, I, Vivian Sanchez Jones, on behalf of Sherman P. Lee Sr., Mayor of the City of Roanoke, Virginia, do hereby proclaim September 15 through October 15, 2023, throughout this great 7-time All-American City as Hispanic and Latinx Heritage Month.
Vivian, you gonna make the presentation?
Yes, and I would like to present this to Ms. Lisa Spencer from Local
You
Colors.
got it, Joe.
Mr. Ballison, would you like to join me, please?
Yeah, just come over this way a
Oh.
bit, so you're not.
No, you will. I will do that. Yes.
There we go. All right. On. Gotcha.
Speaking as a non-Latina, I'm African American. I often get confused for Latina, though, but it is an immense pleasure to receive this on behalf of Local Colors, where we are intent on celebrating the different cultures and heritages that are here in the Roanoke Valley. And so with that, on Saturday, September 30th, I invite you all to our 4th annual Hispanic Heritage Month celebration at John Nolan Plaza. For those who don't know where that is, it's right behind City Market Building outside of Billy's. The event is from 12 to 3, and there you will see a diversity of Latin American cultures. There will be food and other vendors and a very lively stage program. So please come out on September 30th. And thank you.
Thank you for all you do.
Councilwoman.
Thank you. Thank you, Councilwoman
Thank you,
Sanchez
sir.
Jones. All right, our next item is the hearing of citizens upon public matters. And Madam Clerk, do you have any citizens signed up to speak?
Yes, we do. We have 2 speakers. First speaker will be Michael Ferguson, followed by Frida Cathcart.
Welcome, Mr. Ferguson.
City Council. I appreciate Mrs. Jones with the Hispanic. I have property here in the city, and over the last 32 years, I've acquired the property at 725 13th Street. And it was a service station next door to me and a convenience store when I bought it. And I opened the garage next door to it. It was the old long service center, and it was Christian car repair. And over the years, my goal was and is to help people and give them good service at a fair price and not lie to them about what they needed just because you got rent to pay. And I figured that if I did it in a Christian manner and just tell them the truth, that I'd have all the work I could do. And it has turned out that way. And I have my friend next door to me, Mike Dudley, who has the Roanoke Auto Service Center, and he works on the same principle I do. We try to tell people the truth, and if we fix something on the car and it ain't what turned out to be what's wrong, we'll eat it. We'll fix it out of our pocket. And we've done business the same way for 30-some years. Now all of a sudden, y'all have an army of code enforcers in this city that's turned it kind of into like a police state. They go around and write tickets, and I was under the impression that that code was set up, the code enforcement was set up. If you had a piece of property and it was being, the value of it was being brought down by someone in the neighborhood that had something that was devaluing the property, that you could go to them and get it corrected. But it's turned into, they ride around and just cite people on their own. And I don't think that's the way it was set up to start with. And I have worked with a lot of the code enforcers over the years, from when Darlene Burcham was here, and people, we had come up there and they say, well, Darlene Burcham told us to come up here and tell you to do this and this and this. That really wasn't her job. And now it's gotten where we had one here, Tim Solosky, who's moved on, went somewhere else, and he come up there and told us we had too many cars on the lot, cars that were untagged and things like that. Well, we're a repair shop. Cars are brought in to get repaired, and a lot of them don't have tags on them. Car dealers bring stuff in. They don't have tags on them. And Mike Dudley has the inspection license, and we fix cars and get them inspected and get them back on the road. And we're not miracle workers. We don't have magic wands, and we don't do it overnight. And so cars do sit there. And one of them told Mike Dudley, says, well, you got too many cars on your lot. You shouldn't have more than 5 cars on your lot. Well, we bought the whole lot. We paid taxes on the whole lot. Why can't we use the whole lot? And I think now Solowski's moved on, and they brought charges against us, and it got dismissed in court because he quit, and it's kind of like an officer writing you a ticket and then don't show up for court. It goes away. And so now Mr. Moore and Mr. White have decided that they're going to say, we're not repair shops, we're wrecking yards. Wrecking yards buy cars, they dismantle them and sell parts off of them. We do not sell parts to the public off of our cars. I have a lot of antique cars there that I have bought that are personally mine, that I've bought over the years, that I was hoping when I got old enough to retire, I could fix them up and sell them and not have to work on other people's cars, but they won't let me. I'm 74 years old now, and I'd kind of like to move to my farm, and I'm working on selling the property to Black Dog Salvage on my part. So I'll be out of y'all's hair. But Mike Dudley is still going to be there for a while, and I'm speaking a lot on his behalf. Somebody needs to reel in code enforcement, because when we ask them who's complaining, you know who they tell us who's complaining? City manager's office. And I asked him about it. He said, I don't know nothing about it. So where's it coming from? And over the years, I've done my best to bring the place up. That was a service station when I bought it. It is now one of the best Mexican restaurants in the city. And those guys work hard. I love those guys. He has now opened up 4 more and working on this 5th one. And he works hard, and I don't, all I've tried to do is make the stuff better. And between me and my other half, We pay this city $1,000 a month in real estate taxes. And then I still have to put up with code enforcement telling us we can't do what we do. That's all I got to say. Thank you.
Okay, we're gonna refer that again, sir, to the city manager, and I probably should have said this earlier, that all matters will be referred to the city manager for a response or recommendation or report to council. And he will do that, he or his staff will do that, and then we'll evaluate that. Okay. What's the address? What's your address?
Mike Dudley's is 701 13th Street, mine's 725 13th Street.
Okay.
And I'll be gone hopefully by the end of the year because Robert Wolf at Black Dog Salvage is going to be purchasing my whole corner. And I'm moving to the county to my farm.
Okay, thank you. We'll refer that to the city manager. All right.
Our next speaker is Frida Cathcart.
There's some copies for the clerk as well. So there's two separate sheets. One for the, so there's 8 copies, one for the clerk and.
Got it.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right, welcome, Frida.
Thank you for this opportunity. I'm here to speak up on behalf of, well, at this point, 14 years of experience as a neighborhood leader. It's not always easy being a neighborhood leader. It's generally a thankless job. It's the invisible work that's done behind the scenes that helps connect people to what's happening in the city, what's happening in their neighborhood, what's happening with each other. And it's one of the things I enjoy doing, actually, is connecting with my neighbors and helping them to connect with services that they might need. It's really hard to be an officer in an organization where the bylaws aren't very good. And I hadn't really looked closely at the Granite Court Neighborhood Association bylaws until this past May, when people were raising objections to it. I mean, I'd looked at them before, but just as far as, you know, what were the problems and identify, actually it was before last May, it was like last fall, but anyhow, noticing that they needed to be cleaned up, that there was some questions, like whether who's an active member or not, and just being a parliamentarian, helping with bylaws and other organizations, I recognized where they needed to be improved. And so we sent that out to the membership saying, hey, we know we need to solve these problems. I know that you all have received a lot of complaints, as we did too, with the leadership about how we conducted meetings, what our approach was. Well, when you're an officer, you're obligated to fulfill your bylaws. Like whether you like it or not, the answer is to change the bylaws. You can't change the bylaws without the membership giving the approval to change the bylaws. Otherwise, you're strapped with what the bylaws are. So that's when we got that notice to removal calling to have a removal vote by somebody, a neighbor in our, that hadn't been to one of our meetings in over 5 years. It's like, and it says only active members can do things. And we reached out to a professional parliamentarian to say, like, how can he be an active member? And she says, because your bylaws don't define an active member, as soon as he walks through the door and he's eligible, he's an active member. So you have to treat him as that. We didn't like that answer. We didn't think it was a fair answer. But we followed the bylaws and Robert's Rules of Order because that was our fiduciary responsibility. So we did it, and we found out how we were supposed to have the vote, what was supposed to happen. The Roanoke Neighborhood Advocates Chair was aware of that we were doing that, and we were told you had to have the vote at the very beginning of the next meeting. No other business could be conducted before the vote. So we did that, or we tried to do it, and the chair of the Roanoke Neighborhood Advocates obstructed that process. And that is the moment that the professional parliamentarian identified as the breach of order, that everything was null and void after that breach took place. I want to read from you an email that was sent to the mayor the night of that meeting and then was sent a few days later to all of you. This is an excerpt from it. The quote of it says, "After the voting was completed, Ms. Grubb set herself up as the leader and allowed another vote for officers, which was inappropriate. There was a motion to adjourn by me, which Ms. Grubb argued with me, creating even more tension. She does not know Robert's Rules of Order, but sets herself up as an expert. The meeting was chaotic and dangerous due to her interference. I was fearful for safety for myself and anyone who had an opposing point of view. Many people left before the first vote when it became obvious that the meeting was out of control due to Ms. Grubb's interference. I am calling for her to be removed from president of the RNA." And that's the end of her quote. The chair of the RNA, as far as I know, didn't even have our bylaws before the meeting where the removal vote was supposed to take place. It clearly states in our bylaws that any vacancy of office which may occur for any reason must be filled by a special vote of the membership at the next scheduled meeting of the association. So there's just so much that was out of order and inappropriate there. Because of the interference, we were not removed from our positions. We still are. Our terms are up in November. We're going to have a meeting this Thursday to revise our bylaws. We've asked for support from the city for police. I just got a response today saying, nope, can't send an officer to help you. So I'm just making you all aware of what we've been going through. And I've got to say, at this time in my life, not that everybody's not busy and has stuff happening, I don't need this additional aggravation. This should be a simple matter, following our bylaws, implementing them, having a simple meeting, and then our elections in November. We need to step up as a city and support each other with kindness and compassion. This has been very hard. As you all probably are aware in the media, there's been incorrect reporting about this. It's been hard to hear. It may be a thankless job to be a neighborhood leader, but it shouldn't be one that you're stepped on and treated like trash and stuck out. 14 years. 14 years I've served our neighborhood and worked with the city, bring grants to our neighborhood, improve our quality of life. And I'm asking for a little bit of decency and support to bring us through to have an orderly transition. It's the very least we deserve. And your website needs to be corrected. It says Grand Court Neighborhood Association to be determined. We are the officers. If you don't know what's happening with our Grand Court neighborhood, then you just put that down blankly. But we are an independent civic organization with our own bylaws and need to be treated with respect that way. And we're doing our best to fulfill our fiduciary responsibility. It's not fair otherwise. And I would like to suggest a two-state alternative. If there are people in our neighborhood that have found a group where they get along well together, and they want to have pancake breakfasts and do whatever it is they want to do and have their own rules and do their own stuff, then fine. They can create their own organization with their own bylaws and their own name and do whatever they want. But we've been around since the 1990s. We're one of the very few left neighborhood organizations that's active. And we do have people willing to step up, new people in leadership. Owen and I are done. They're new people, but they won't step up if there's chaos and we can't move forward with good bylaws for them to fulfill, because they saw what a mess this was. And I wouldn't recommend anybody stepping into a mess like this. Anyhow, I appreciate y'all's time with this. The letters, what we gave to the RNA, we haven't received a response from them, but the neighborhoods are the connecting hub for all the other stuff, gun violence, everything else that goes on in the city. We need functioning neighborhood organizations collaborating with the city for good results. So I hope that can be established and move forward. Thank you. Do you have any questions for me, or?
No, but I think we're aware of that, and I think there will be some changes coming up about the neighborhood association. So.
Yeah, parliamentarian procedure. It takes a two-day exam to be. It takes a two-day exam to be a professional registered parliamentarian. I looked into it myself. It's a lot of work. It's a 700-page, Robert's Rules of Order is a 700-page book, and it's complicated about how to interpret it and how to interpret. But bylaws come first, and organizations' bylaws come first.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Walson has a question.
Well, actually, it would be for Mr. Cowell or Mr. Spencer. Is that a correct reading of how bylaws and Robert's rules work? You know, if it is a bylaw, is it something that has to be followed? And, you know, I think that's the main question here.
I would have to look at their particular bylaws before I would want to comment in detail, and I think that it would be best if we did that in a quiet, respectful manner and not from the podium, if that's okay.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely.
Thank you.
That was the correct answer, which the chair of the RNA didn't do. You always look at the bylaws first.
All right, thank you. Does that conclude our speakers?
Yes, sir. No other speakers.
All right, we'll now move down to, item number 4 on our agenda, is the consent agenda. All matters listed under the consent agenda are considered to be routine by the members of City Council and will be enacted by one motion. There will be no separate discussions of the items. If discussion is desired, the item will be removed from the consent agenda and considered separately. I want to call your attention to 2 requests for closed meetings from Council Member Twitch White Board and their city attorney. A Council Member Board will not be with us today, but the Vice Chairman of our Personnel Committee, Vice Mayor Cobbs, will carry that meeting on. Item number 1 is to discuss a personnel matter, being the annual performances of the council-appointed officers pursuant to Section 2.2-3711 Code of Virginia, 1950 as amended. The second meeting is to consult with legal counsel regarding litigation, where such consultation or briefing in an open meeting would adversely affect the negotiation or litigation posture of the public body pursuant to Section 2.2-3711 Code of Virginia as amended. I need a motion for the agenda, consent agenda.
Move the consent agenda.
Second.
Madam Clerk, can you please call the roll?
Mr. Vollerson?
Aye.
Ms. Moon Reynolds?
Aye.
Ms. Sanchez Jones?
Aye.
Vice Mayor Cobb?
Aye.
And Mayor Lee?
Aye. And the consent agenda is approved. All right, we have no public hearings this afternoon. Item 6 is petitions and communications. The acceptance of the, 6.1 is the acceptance of the FY 2022 CCAP reimbursement grant award. There is a there are two measures. One is a resolution.
Move the resolution. Second.
All right. Madam Clerk, can you read the title paragraph, please?
Yes. A resolution authorizing acceptance of the State Criminal Alien Assistance Program grant made to the City of Roanoke Sheriff's Office by the Bureau of Justice Assistance Office in conjunction with the U.S. Department of Homeland Security, and authorizing execution of any required documentation on behalf of the city.
All right. Is there any discussion from members of council? Hearing none, Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Mr. Volleson?
Aye.
Ms. Moon Reynolds?
Aye.
Ms. Sanchez Jones? Vice Mayor Cobb?
Aye.
And Mayor Lee?
Aye, and the resolution passes. There's a budget ordinance.
Move the budget ordinance.
Second.
Madam Clerk, please read the title paragraph.
An ordinance to appropriate funding from the federal government for the State Criminal Alien Assistance Program and for an administrative adjustment amending and reordaining certain sections of the 2023-2024 grant fund appropriations and dispensing with the second reading by title of this ordinance.
Thank you. Any discussion? Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Mr. Volleson?
Aye.
Ms. Moon Reynolds?
Aye.
Ms. Sanchez Jones? Vice Mayor Cobb?
Aye.
And Mayor Lee?
Aye, and the budget ordinance passes. I think from time to time, I'd like to remind our audience and citizens that we get these agendas 3 to 4 days before we meet. So we've had a chance to read them and go through them. So when you see us go through them, it's not that we're aware of what's in them, but we're going through the proper procedures to do this. All right. Item number 2 is the acceptance of the FY24 School Resource Officer Program Grant. There are two measures here. One is a resolution.
Move the resolution.
Second.
All right. Madam Clerk, can you please read the title paragraph?
A resolution authorizing acceptance of the School Resource Officer Grant made to the City of Roanoke Sheriff's Office by the Virginia Department of Criminal Justice and authorizing execution of any required documentation on behalf of the city.
All right. Any discussion by members of council? All right. Hearing none, Madam Clerk, call the roll, please.
Mr. Volleson?
Aye.
Ms. Moon Reynolds?
Aye.
Ms. Sanchez Jones?
Aye.
Vice Mayor Cobb?
Aye.
Mayor Lee?
Aye, and the resolution passes. The next, I need a motion for a budget ordinance, please.
Move the budget ordinance.
Second.
Madam Clerk, please read the title paragraph.
An ordinance appropriating funding from the Virginia Department of Criminal Justice Services to provide funding for school resource officers positions, amending and reordaining certain sections of the 2023-2024 grant fund appropriations, and dispensing with the second reading by title of this ordinance.
Thank you. Is there any discussion by members of council? Hearing none, Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Mr. Volleson?
Aye.
Ms. Moon Reynolds?
Aye.
Ms. Sanchez Jones? Vice Mayor Cobb?
Aye.
And Mayor Lee?
Aye, and the budget ordinance passes. Item number 6.3 is a presentation of the activities, initiatives, and capital needs of the Jefferson Center. Cyrus L. Pace, Executive Director, is the spokesperson, and this is being sponsored by Vice Mayor Cobb and Council Member Moon Reynolds. And I'm pleased to recognize Mr. Pace, and he's been allotted 10 minutes to share with us his thoughts
Thank you.
and concerns.
Good afternoon. My name is Cyrus Pace, and I'm the Executive Director of Jefferson Center. Thank you for this time today, and thank you to Vice Mayor Joe Cobb and Council Member Stephanie Moon Reynolds for sponsoring our presentation. So many wonderful memories have been made at Jefferson Center. 2024 marks the 100th year of service for our historic building. There is a lot to celebrate, so many inspiring moments, and a dedicated board and staff you can believe in. We bring people together in a unifying and uplifting way. That is at the core of community space and not something you can make up. I believe capital follows culture, not the other way around. I'm here because we value our relationship with the city, and on behalf of our board of directors, I'd like to speak openly about Jefferson Center. There's a widening gap between the expectations created by an outdated lease and the realities of maintaining a 100-year-old, 131,000 square foot building that belongs to the city of Roanoke. The only way to bridge this gap is with a candid collaborative solution. With today's inflationary pressure and more than $6 million in capital needs for the building on top of ongoing operating expenses, Jefferson Center has 1 to 2 years of useful life left, unless there is timely investment from the city. With gratitude for past support and for our truly meaningful and successful public-private partnership, I'll elaborate and explain why a new partnership with the city is essential to keeping Jefferson Center alive as a catalyst of arts, culture, and economy in Roanoke. In 1985, City Council appointed a citizens committee to determine the future of the crumbling Jefferson Senior High School. Rather than demolish the building, the committee determined it would become a center to house arts, education, social service nonprofits, and other small businesses. The city committed $3 million to the project. The city also supported a later stage campaign to rebuild what is now Chapin Performance Hall, as well as the construction of Fitzpatrick Hall. There have been various other capital initiatives supported by the city of Roanoke. What we are faced with is an expectation gap. The community's expectation that Jefferson Center remains a key player and catalyst of arts, culture, and economy, and the reality. After a 30-year track record of success in operations and fundraising, we have discovered we will never have the level of surplus needed to sustain the building. Despite our best efforts to bridge this gap, fundraising, securing grants, maximizing revenue streams, managing expenses, it continues to widen with time. Our projection is that the building's capital needs will overtake our ability to operate in 1 to 2 years if there's no investment from the city. We need to close the gap together by establishing more realistic expectations with increased financial support. We are here as the good stewards of your building, a cultural landmark, and of your $6.7 million investment over the years, and I'm asking for your serious commitment to finding a solution. Since our main auditorium was renovated in the 90s, we've welcomed over 1 million attendees to nearly 2,000 performances, hosted over 200 events a year, performance events, and created a life-changing education program, and been home to an impactful array of nonprofits and small businesses. We put on more than 35 performances a year ourselves. More importantly, we're a rentable venue other local nonprofit arts organizations rely upon for their shows. An average of 60-plus additional performances a year from organizations like Opera Roanoke, Roanoke Valley Theater, who have no performance venue of their own. It is because of Jefferson Center that organizations like this can perform. We are directly fueling the arts and cultural performances Roanoke has come to expect. Collectively, these benefit the city of Roanoke in a big way. As you know, Roanoke views arts and culture as integral to the community because of their potential to enhance the quality of life, increase tourism, support education, and stimulate the economy. A study on the economic impact of nonprofit arts organizations in Roanoke found attendees spend an average of $32.28 per person to attend a performance on top of the cost of admission. That's $1.14 million back into the Roanoke economy from attendees of ticketed events at the Jefferson Center in the 22-23 season alone. We also serve a diverse audience. More than a third of our attendees represent minority populations. About a third of our ticket buyers for our events last year came from outside of the Roanoke area. We rent venue space to local organizations for an additional 200-plus non-performance related events a year, including the Virginia Tech Carilion School of Medicine for their match day, white coat, and graduation ceremonies. We offer music education to the Harry and Levon Webb Education Center, and the Music Lab is a vital part of our mission to children, regardless of their ability to pay. Programming not only teaches music skills, but life skills focused on expression, literacy, self-esteem, and collaboration through music. We also provide office space to regional nonprofits and businesses, including New Vista Montessori School, which cares for more than 96 children daily. New Vista is hopeful to increase their reach to an additional 50 families with a major expansion that depends on support today from the city of Roanoke. Allowing these organizations to concentrate on fulfilling their individual missions rather than focus on capital concerns is part of the impact of Jefferson Center's mission. I'd also like to mention that Local Colors is also a tenant at Jefferson Center. You may know that. Not to mention the building itself has significant historical and cultural value and is an anchor on the west end of downtown. Its simple presence makes development and has made development in that area possible. Above all, Jefferson Center is a business challenged every day to remain relevant, inspirational, and transformative. all while maintaining a facility that is quickly failing. Local architecture and engineering firm Hughes Associates recently completed a capital needs assessment and found $6,016,145 in critical needs recommended for immediate remediation and to be completed within the next 5 years. No surprise for a 100-year-old building that has not seen any significant renovation since it was saved from demolition in the 80s and Chatham Hall was renovated in the 90s. This report is linked in the packet you received and can be provided to you at your request. The capital needs are significant. Delaying or doing nothing only widens the gap. It's making it increasingly difficult to operate sustainably. It's time to consider all that would be lost if we ignore a building that is part of the identity of Roanoke and a mission that is celebrated and supported by our community. Regardless of our success thus far, we cannot keep pace. The original business model was designed to use revenue from office leasing and facility rentals to cover the cost of operational maintenance, and we've done this successfully for 30 years. However, the business model was never designed to cover capital for building system replacements like we're faced with now. The original architects of the leasing plan could not have predicted a time when major systems would begin to fail. Operating revenue does not create a surplus for capital expenditures. It never has and never will. Tenant leasing no longer even covers the cost of day-to-day operational maintenance. As we entered fiscal year 24, the business model results continued to deteriorate with large office spaces without tenants and a rental market flooded with competitive space. In addition, we have already identified imminent capital maintenance expenditures of $150,000 and another $100,000 likely in the next 6 months, consisting of fire sprinkler head replacements, boiler pumps, common area carpet, and multiple HVAC units. It's important to note that there are no untapped opportunities for additional income. Lease and rental rates are as high as the market allows, and commercial leasing is challenged. Short-term venue rental is near capacity. Hosting more performances drives ticket sales, yes. However, this does not cover full event costs and requires more underwriting. We've been tremendously successful at fundraising. $21,635,336 total gifts over the past 34 years, 3 times what the city has provided. To ensure our due diligence on potential additional philanthropic support, the Curtis Group, a nonprofit fundraising consulting firm, just completed a fundraising feasibility study for a major campaign. Results are based on interviews with 27 major donors as well as 100 survey responses. It found that Jefferson Center has the potential to raise an estimated $2.5 million from donors for mission delivery, restricted to programming, which is our concert and education program, and the work we do for other nonprofits. This goal depends, and this is very important, on a primary commitment from the city, as donors overwhelmingly wanted to understand the city's commitment before deciding on their own commitments. Donors also implied that without city investment, they may be less inclined to maximize their investment. Fundraising alone will not solve the challenges that are looming, and without an early commitment from the city, our fundraising efforts will be hampered and may not even begin. I'm not asking you to fund more of our programming. What we need is your commitment to helping close the gap between the expectation that we continue to operate the building and the realities that make that impossible. Specifically, we need $6 million, roughly $1 million a year over the next 6 years, in addition to an immediate disbursement with an immediate answer of $250,000 to cover our most immediate needs. Coupled with our own efforts in support of mission delivery, this would address the capital needs and keep Jefferson Center alive. Roanoke has already generously given $6 million to fund Jefferson Center capital expenses and operations over the past 34 years. We are thankful for that. When you weigh your decision against other priorities, which I know are extensive, I ask that you remember that Jefferson Center is far more than just music. We fuel arts and culture, but we also put millions into the local economy. We house 18 organizations and businesses that do the same. We contribute to the retention and recruitment of regional talent. We allow other nonprofits to carry out their missions. As we impact lives, and we impact lives of children, not to mention Jefferson Center is a stunning historic building worthy of continued investment. We have been steadfast in our stewardship, doing our best to inch our way across the gap, but it is becoming too wide to do alone. The need is great, but the risk of not fulfilling it is even greater. We need to move quickly so we don't lose this enormous asset and catalyst to our community. With that, I appreciate your time and consideration and quick response to our request for a $6 million investment and a $250,000 immediate disbursement. I look forward to a celebration of our collective effort to protect what is part of the identity of the Star City. I hope you'll join us, and I'm happy to answer any questions you might have.
Thank you, Cyrus. I'm going to call on the sponsors for any comments they may have. First, I'll begin with the Vice Mayor.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Cyrus. This is a great and sobering update. I do have a couple questions. First of all, I love the Jefferson Center. I used to work there with the Symphony, so I'm well acquainted with the building, all of its gifts and challenges, which I know have been many. And I know how challenging it is to address the capital issues, especially when so many of them have to be deferred. In addition to what you've presented today, I know the board has been really doing intensive work on this. Can you share any of the other initiatives or strategies that the board is taking?
Sure.
To look at the whole picture?
Sure. I mean, it started in calendar year 2022, where we updated our strategic plan to include taking care of capital infrastructure as being a priority for our organization. It's clear that we've got a great team. If we have to continue to run around turning off fire alarms, it's going to be difficult for us to continue to do the mission work that we do. Secondly, they've been involved all along, particularly in the capital needs assessment, and they approved in the fall our work, as mentioned in here, on a feasibility study necessary to find out what might be possible in the philanthropic community in terms of donor support. I'd also like to mention it's really easy these days to think post-pandemic and pre-pandemic, right? So pre-pandemic, think about 2014, 2015, we had a campaign then as well, necessary to just overcome the issues we had at that time. So this board's been very involved from the very beginning in the 1980s, as mentioned, but all the way through, not just as a steward for the conversation, but frankly providing oversight that me and my team are doing the right stuff in terms of analyzing the problem.
Thank you.
And many of them are here today as well.
Yeah, thank you. It'd be great to know who of the board is here, if y'all want to just stand so we can see
And
you.
tenants.
And tenants.
And staff and
Yeah.
tenants. I know a lot of you are here, so thank you for being here today and for sharing your support.
Yeah, thank you.
So, I know you gave us an overview of the capital needs that are in and the funding that's needed for the critical remediation. Does the capital needs assessment go into detail about those?
It does.
Okay, that would be, I'd personally like to see a
Sure.
copy.
Yeah, and
that
in your
would be helpful.
packet, we did flesh out by category how we got to
Okay.
that total.
That'd be fine.
Yeah, but the report itself, and Mike Woolwine's here from Hughes, is 95 pages long and pretty extensive in terms of its calculation. He's also clear in there what third parties they use to analyze the specific systems in the building and how they came up with the math there as well.
You mentioned early on that the lease was outdated. Can you talk a little bit more about what you mean by that?
Sure. So it's my way of saying what was a good idea in the 1990s ended up being a great idea for 30 years. All the great programming and the support for other arts organizations and those 2,000 concerts and 1 million people having great experiences, and all that's happened. But the lease is not going to allow us to continue to think about a better partnership with the city of Roanoke. So over the years, the city has supported us with capital initiatives. And so in my mind, it's outdated simply because no one in 1991 could have thought about the realities of operating that building over that period of time. Yeah.
Okay. What do we give currently? What's our level of support?
Other than occasionally was mentioned capital, or we had some, I think it was back with CARES Act, we had some funding that went, there is no set funding that goes, the lease that's being talked about is, basically the lease agreement is, here's the building, it's yours to operate, they're responsible for capital, they get to obviously keep whatever, and we don't charge rent for the building, that's the lease arrangement, but there's no annual recurring commitment to the Jefferson
Yeah,
Center.
particularly other than the Roanoke Arts Commission, of course,
Right,
and operational
which is
support, right.
minimal in the big picture, right, but important. So you've asked for $250,000 as an immediate need. What is that to address?
Sure. So most primarily, we are after the 20-year mark in Chapman Performance Hall, in fact, 23 years. So we needed to do a check on the sprinkler heads in Chapman Performance Hall. This is just one example. And enough of those sprinkler heads failed and all of them now have to be replaced based on fire codes. That's a $55,000 project. The HVAC that serves the Fralin Atrium, which, as you know, is the bar, which is an important part of every performance, plus also a place we host many events, it's completely gone, and that's a $42,000 project. We have boiler pump repairs and replacement, meaning the system necessary to push hot water out into the building, which is necessary for heat and other systems. That's a $12,000 problem. The HVAC in Suite 304 is completely dead. That's an $11,000 problem. We found over the weekend that the air handler that serves Fostec, which is our small performance space, its module died and the contacts have been blown out. That's a $4,000 problem. We need to look at replacing the front doors. We're not sure, but we think those front doors may have been there since the 1940s or 50s. And we're running into a really difficult issue, which is they're so old and are falling out of their frame, which means that the system necessary to lock those doors is running into issues, so we'll be in the middle of a performance and people can't get into the building. And as you know, when you want people to come to art music, you want to make sure they have no hurdles for doing so. Yeah.
Does the building have an historic designation?
It does.
Okay, so anything done externally has to go
Yeah,
through that
in fact,
process.
it's a great question. One of the problems with those doors is we've estimated it's $5,000 a door for replacement to be within the ARB's expectations for it to look similar to what was there before.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think really the last question I have is more of a process and observation. And you and I have talked about this, and I think everybody knows. One of the challenges we face when we look at capital improvement projects is what's already scheduled and what we don't anticipate. And while I know that to a degree there wasn't an ability to control the pace at which some of these, no pun intended, at which some of these things happened, it's I think what's startling is to hear an immediate need when we have so many immediate needs in the city. So part of the challenge for us is evaluating that and how that balances with what else we have in our capital projects. Now, that's not to say we haven't made adjustments before, and I would certainly be curious personally to see if we were to make, let's say your request of $6 million, this is hypothetical at this point, but if we were to do that over 6 years, what adjustments would have to be made in the capital improvement project schedule that we currently have? And I would be interested to know what that might look like. That's not an answer one way or the other, but it's information.
Right.
And I think it's important that we have that. In terms of the 250 immediately, I'm not sure what we currently have available, if that's something that we could commit to. I don't have any doubt that, as a council, we value the asset that the Jefferson Center is, and all of us are there a lot because we appreciate it. So just for me, I appreciate this update, and I think there is some more information we can gather that we probably need before we can make a decision. But this really gives us a spot-on picture of what you all need, and I appreciate it.
Thank you. I mean, I feel really good about the analysis, so we can overburden you with data as soon as you're ready for it. Yeah, particularly on the 250 immediate need. Even if we get to a point that we can be included in the CIP, we still have to make sense of this fiscal year through July 1. At the same time, we're thinking about putting together a campaign necessary to take care of the operational needs. And again, without a response, even the immediate response, I have some fears and concerns. And so I'm here to be honest with you about that.
Anytime you're launching a capital campaign, you need momentum.
Yeah.
And
well, I think in this case, the momentum clearly needs to and necessitates the city's start.
Thank you. Mayor, that's all I had.
Thank you. Ms. Moon Reynolds?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think the Vice Mayor pretty much covered some of my questions. The only thing I would say is, and this is just for the manager, I believe I would think you've had conversations with Mr. Cowell about this, and I guess I would just look to find out from him what the numbers look like and report his findings back to the council. And then we can make some kind of determination based on the scenarios that he gives. I did take the opportunity to review the minutes going back all the way back to the 90s. And
As I had stated when I had opportunity to talk with you briefly, I was the secretary to the board when it was formed back in 1985.
Yes, ma'am.
When they were starting with the Jefferson Center, as well as building Chapman Hall, along with Fitzpatrick Hall. So I do know the history there. And I have to commend you all on the services that you've always been able to provide to the citizens, the shows that you've always been able to bring to the Jefferson Center. I was just at one this past week in the
Fosdeck Hall.
Yes, and that was nice too. On Good Sunday morning, I think it was called.
That's the evening that the HVAC went out.
Actually. Oh, yeah.
So if you were comfortable, we did a good job of covering it.
I came prepared. My husband didn't, but I came prepared.
Yeah.
And then when you put on this show for Gladys Knight, I mean, who could ask for more than that? So I do see the need there. And the last time you all came before council with a capital need was in April of 2013. And the city did provide some funding, and some of it was contingent upon you raising the equal amount, of the funding for them to also give money. And as it has been stated, that the city does own the building, and that as a capital asset, and that like any leased properties, as the landlord, we are expected to maintain those major items that you referred to. But again, I think we need to just kind of wait to see what the city manager can bring back, especially for your immediate need, and then maybe look at what we can do on the capital end. But I do appreciate you coming to bring those needs forward. And I think during that time, I noticed that you were coming on a regular basis to bring an annual report. And
pay our $10 rent.
And pay I remember that,
Right.
and your check for $10.
Right.
So it does show, I think you've been good stewards of the money, and you're just trying to maintain what you do have that the city owns. And so I do want to wait till we find out what the city manager has to say.
Obviously, I'll do that. Obviously, Mr. Pace and I have had conversations, although I will say, the inclusion of this in the packet is the first time that I've actually seen this information. So I've not seen it before.
That's why I said to give you that opportunity.
And the only other clarity, and it goes back to kind of the inadequacy, I guess, of the lease is, just to be clear, the lease agreement that they currently operate under, that they've operated under for 34 plus years, actually requires all expenses, including these capital expenses, to be borne by the Jefferson Center, which is what they're saying, that they can't do that. So there is actually no obligation at this moment under the lease by the city to actually do this. There wasn't the last time we did fundraising either, just to be clear with that, but yeah.
Would it be bold to ask for an appropriate follow-up period? Because, to be honest, these are answers we need to understand.
And I can give some answer to that. There can't be a discussion regarding the $6 million until we get into the budget development for the CIP.
Right, okay.
The $250,000 I'll have to look and see to give you an answer. It could be a year-end consideration, but obviously $250,000 is not budgeted currently for any expense. So that $250,000 would have to come from something else or from surplus at the end of the year to be able to do that piece. And you all know this. You've said this. Cyrus knows this. This is all about trade-offs, and ultimately I have to come back to you with, here are some options. Right now, one of our elevators doesn't work in this building. I've got roofs that are leaking throughout this building. We have, obviously, our capital needs as well. I've got probably $7 million worth of expenses in the jail that you all have to weigh also. And so, even for the short-term piece, I've got to bring that back to you. So definitely on the capital piece, I know it's going to be a part of the budget discussion. The $250,000 conversation comes sooner. But it really is going to be a discussion of, does it look like we have surplus at the end, or is there something else we can forego in order to actually do that piece? And, I'll work on that. We have a budget planning retreat November 3rd, so we could use that as kind of a target as a first piece of information with it. That wouldn't be necessarily the capital piece, but maybe the $250,000 piece, we could have that discussion.
That's what I was going to ask about our budget, during our budget retreat. Could that item be discussed at that time?
Because we would be giving you a projection what we
Yeah.
think our revenues will be for the upcoming year. We can start looking at where we are in this current year. So I think that's a good mark that we could kind of come back and visit that piece of it at least. And that begins the process for the capital discussion also as we move forward.
And I think that's reasonable. That's within a 60-day
great.
period.
Yeah.
So I think if we could do that, that would be good.
I have a great
Discuss it
deal
then.
of gratitude about that. Thank you.
Okay.
Are you done, Ms. Moore?
Yes, sir, I am.
Councilman Volson?
Mr. Pace, thank you for coming in and for all the work you've done with the Jefferson Center. One of the questions that's coming up in my mind is, have y'all looked at reimagining the space? You know, if we're going to put $6 million into capital expenditures, is there a better use of the building or some of these spaces? Obviously, the theater is going to stay a theater, but there's a lot of space in that building. So could that other space be used in other ways that might be more advantageous? You know, let's think about like arts lofts or something like that. I just want to make sure that when we're doing this, we're also looking at the future of the Jefferson Center and saying, hey, you know, if we did this at the same time as when we're doing these capital expenditures, it'll cost us less, or there might be some kind of public-private partnership that might be able to be created. So I just want to make sure that we're looking outside the box a little bit.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So what are the things that like you guys would like? Has there been a talk about this, about renovating or reimagining?
So for lofts, do you mean living spaces, or do you mean, so some of that would require a code change, and also people who are willing to be living in a building where we might be having a concert till 1 a.m, which I think would be kind of cool in its own way. But so there'd be some changes there, but I know a lot of downtown office space is being converted to housing for people. It's an interesting question too, because such a big part of our financial landscape is created by that tenant leasing. So every opportunity that doesn't necessarily generate for economic or financial momentum for us just hurts the operational side even more. So I don't have any bold or interesting ideas that would be a solution of that category, but I think it's good to continue to think about them.
And if I may, on that particular point also, obviously, if ultimately the council chooses to move forward either with the $250,000 or the $6 million ask or some version of that, obviously that is beyond what's in the lease. We've already heard kind of the lease is out of date. So minimum, I think there needs to be a renegotiation of the lease terms with the center. And I will say, to your point, we're the owner of this building. I think there has to be a conversation also about the future of this building, just as there was 30-something years ago. I mean, maybe, you know, to be fair to them, what they're saying is probably every 20 years, 15 years, we're going to come back with a similar request. And I think as a council, you've got to look and say, is that something you ultimately anticipate building into your budget, or is there another use for this building? I'm not suggesting any of that. I'm just saying that those are things that ultimately you're going to have to consider.
That's exactly right. Yeah. And I would argue, if I may, that the combination of public-private partnership, which includes, again, donorship 3 times what the city has put in, tells you that the model actually works, the community cares about it. So it would need to be a model that inspires that same kind of donorship and giving over time, and that's hard. So far, we've found what that model is, right? That 2.5 million in possible gifts comes from people who believe that we should keep doing the type of concerts that we do, continuing to run the music lab, continuing to provide services to other nonprofits. So I think that model works, but long-term, I wouldn't disagree codifying some of this change with a bigger commitment in terms of its sustainability is absolutely the right way to think about it. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
All right, Cyrus, thank you.
Thank you.
For this line of communication, and we look forward to more as we go down the line.
Thank you.
Okay.
Mayor, if we could, on the next items, if it would be okay to go out of order, because I know the police chief will be leaving for the press conference, so if we could actually do the discussion of the youth curfew and summer activities before we do the budget piece, if that would be okay?
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Okay.
No, I got left when you came up here, so. I have no idea.
Oh, yep, it was camouflage well.
So Mayor, we have, as Chief is going to tell, we have two briefings for you today. As mentioned, one is the regular monthly budget briefing. We'll do that after this one. This is also when the youth curfew was expanded. A few months ago, there was a sunset date attached to that expansion, which we have passed. There was also a commitment that we would come back and report on that. I asked the staff to do that, but also asked them to not only address what the summer youth program or youth curfew program looked like, but also all of the other summer youth activities that occurred during that same period of time, since the whole purpose of both the curfew and the other was to keep youth engaged in something constructive and positive rather than risk getting in harm's way. So it's kind of a combined presentation in that regard.
Well, thank you, and thank you, Chief,
Yes,
for
sir.
coming to us this afternoon. And you have the floor.
Thank you, sir. I appreciate the opportunity to talk to you this afternoon. So again, as Mr. Cowell had mentioned, council enacted or expanded a curfew back in June, but we didn't really have it at our disposal. We needed to do a number of things. We needed to work with the juvenile court services. We needed to kind of get some training out to our folks about how it worked. And so we didn't really have it available per se for officers to use until about July 1st. And then it went through August 31st when the sunset came into effect. So we did not write any citations during that period to any juveniles. There were only a couple of incidents where juveniles were either victims or offenders during those curfew hours that were in place. One of those was on July 19th at 4:30 in the morning, where a juvenile was struck by gunfire. And then another incident that was, one of the victims in that case was a juvenile who was struck by gunfire on the 12th of August around midnight. And then also during that period, we arrested one juvenile. It was actually technically an arrest. It was a child in need of services sort of petition where we picked up someone who had been a chronic runaway and under court supervision. We picked him up at another person's home. Officers happened to be called there and took him into custody. So in that instance, he was in a home, so it wasn't out on the street, so it didn't really apply. These small numbers is just a little difficult for us to say yes, no, had an effect. I was not here in 2022. I think, council had some concerns about juvenile crime during that period, which kind of led you into considering the curfew, lots of discussion about enacting that. So maybe some shifting. We've talked about that in the Gun Violence Prevention Commission meetings and other times, that kind of our gun violence in 2023 has really expanded age-wise, just a lot of different people. Unfortunately, this weekend, we had some gun violence. None of those folks were juveniles that were either, we have identified being involved, quote unquote, or as victims or suspects in those instances. So again, a little bit of a shift and I guess a change that the curfew wasn't as usable per se for the police department during the period that it was enacted. Now, you had also requested that we put in place a number of things. Mr. Merchant is with us, and in fact, I think he maybe wants to introduce our newest outreach worker that's assisting him with some of the services. Mr. Merchant wants to come up and introduce our supplement outreach worker to Reset.
Hello. I just want to take a moment to introduce Mr. Ezra Waddy. He's the new outreach. He'll be working with the Reset team in the community. and doing a lot of the community engagement events that we are looking forward to completing. So I'd like for you all to, he's a welcome addition to our team, and he has a lot of contacts, a lot of energy, young, vibrant, and ready to go. So Mr. Ezra Waddy.
Thank you.
Sir. Thank you. Yep.
Mr. Merchant.
Again, some of the things that the reset team put in place during those curfew hours are the Save the Youth 2023 program. They were able to assist 6 young folks in partaking in experiences curated by Doug Pritzer, who is the proprietor of Strokes of Genius, and the activities encompassed a range of kind of sports and arts and crafts and those sorts of things, lots of good social interactions and pursuits, and very successful program that ran for 6 weeks. The Youth Mentorship Program extended its support of 8 youth individuals referred by the Court Services Unit. These are folks that the Court Services Juvenile Court has come in contact with that are are referred to this Youth Mentorship Program. And we also get some referrals from the school system and parents who feel that their children may need some assistance. But we are continuing with that. That's a great program. I think that's really, mentoring is probably one of the greater needs for our youth in our communities today. Then Box Fit is helping 8 youth through that program. Great coaches there. Again, another mentoring program, an outlet for our youth. And then our teen apprenticeship program graduated 11 young folks and are working towards securing employment in various roles across the city of Roanoke. So that's what PD involved with the curfew, and then our reset program, what they have been involved with during this period. Be glad to try and answer any questions you might have.
Thank you, Chief. Let me ask you a question. I don't know who I should ask you, I guess. The Box Fit program, is that still active?
Yes, sir. As a matter of fact, this weekend they went to a competition, and Mr. Merchant can kind of give you. It was a really. They went to Charlottesville and had some great time there. So yes, that is continuing.
Okay.
To your question, yes, sir. It's still active. We go over there every Thursday night at the Norwich Rec Center, where we pick up those individuals who are needing a ride, and we drop them off, and we stay there as they take part in the Box Fit program. And as Chief said, we just came from Charlottesville this weekend. We took 10 boxers there, and they participated in the Gloves Up, Gun Down event initiative, where they're obviously in Charlottesville experiencing some of the same violence that we're experiencing here in the city of Roanoke, and it turned out to be positive. We had six fighters slated to fight, to spar, but we couldn't match everybody up once we got there. It didn't work out the way that they planned. Some fighters from other teams didn't show up, but we ended up having 3 fights, one of which we won, one of which we didn't. But it was a positive outcome, and we've met some folks there that they want to come here and collaborate with us and see how they can help us out in the city of Roanoke. So it was a great event.
Thank you. Could you let us know whenever there's some boxing matches here?
Yes, sir. We're working on that. We're working with Coach Woodbury. He's working on some upkeep of his gym. We're trying to modify the ring to accommodate a match here in the city of Roanoke. That's something that he's currently working on achieving and bringing some of those folks here so we can do the same, have the same outcome, hopefully.
Thank you. Yes, we work with that in other places. I appreciate it. Anybody have a question? Vice Mayor?
Yeah, this is sort of related and sort of not, but I know that this summer we were able to launch the Marcus Alert system, and I know that they've been getting and you all have been getting a lot of calls. Are you able to discuss how many of those might have been youth-related calls?
I have not looked at the age. You're correct. They are being used quite a bit. I can see if I can get that data for you, but I don't, right off the top of my head, I don't have an answer.
That's fine. I'd be curious to know, just kind of because I know the last time I happened to see one of the staff at an event, they were saying they were quite busy. And,
Yes,
and I know that mental health and mental wellness are a critical factor right now, and I'm glad we have that in place, but that also contributes to violence that we see, whether it's youth or adults. So just thank you for
Yes, sir.
that.
Ms. Moon,
Thank you. I'm looking at your reset team, the same one you have up there. I like the one on the Save the Youth 2023 that was overseen by the reset team with the 6, as well as your mentorship and the other ones. My question is, before I say that, I think there are positive things that are done, so I don't want to miss that. But I just look at the numbers of youth that you were able to work with. Was there any reason why it was not more than the 8 or the 6 through the program?
It's not all inclusive. This is
Oh,
not
okay.
all inclusive. It's the information that I got, the information that I was supposed to disseminate was from the end of the school year to going back to school. So that encompasses those 8 referrals. that we
So
had.
even just over the summer months, you were
That's
only
the summer.
able to work with just,
That's the referrals that we received.
okay,
Yes.
okay, even to your youth mentorship program from the court services, even through the schools and the parents, it was only 8?
8 referrals that we received for mentorship.
Okay, and then, okay, that's just so low, I just would have thought more would have been involved, and I don't know if that's based on outreach, or just the numbers from, and did these 8 just primarily just come through the court services unit?
Those that are listed did.
Yeah, so
But-
there was none from the schools or from parents?
Well, I would have to be specific and give you
Yeah,
that specific information.
okay.
Go back to see. I can
Yeah.
tell you all of the ones that we have total. I can give you that number. I wasn't
Okay.
not prepared to do that today. but
I'm sorry to
I
put you
can
on the
give you
spot.
that information at your request or at a later date.
Okay, I'm just curious about the mentorship piece, because, we work with the schools, and I know there are other nonprofits that are working with the schools in mentorships, tutoring and et cetera. And I just think over the summer, I would have thought the numbers would have been a little,
It probably is more, but not
yeah.
to us. I know
Right,
there are other
right.
agencies out here that provide mentorship
yeah,
as well, but this is the number that we had from that time period.
right.
They asked me to provide the information for.
Yeah, I understand, okay.
I agree with that. The number does seem kind of low, and I understand what you're saying,
Yeah.
but it seems kind of low when you have the school system involved, and then parents seeking guidance and mentorship. You think there'd be a
You think the
larger
numbers would
number
be
there.
larger, especially over the summer, when we are talking about activities and getting kids involved, and I'm just looking at, the maximum of 8 that was referred to you all referred to the box fit. I'm just thinking about the summertime when we were talking about getting kids involved and things for the youth to do, and I'm just seeing what you all do, not that that takes away from what you're doing. I don't want for that to be misunderstood.
There are more
I'm
youth
just
in the
looking
box.
at the small numbers.
There are more kids youth and young adults that participate in the box fit program. However, our contract, we're in a contract with Latori, the box fit, boxing and brawling, which allows us up to 8.
Right, that's
A
what
lot
I'm
of times we
saying,
exceed
yeah.
that 8.
And that's what I'm saying, that you all were limited to I saw the
Yes,
max, and I'm
yes.
just saying, just wish that number could have been a little higher.
Well, hopefully we can increase that number.
Was it funding? Was it based on funding, that you had to just stay with 8? And maybe
No.
I'm putting you on the spot, and I apologize.
No, it's a
I'm
part of
not
the
asking-
contract that we
Yeah.
went through purchasing with to acquire his services to provide that boxing to those youth. So we put it up to 8. And a lot of times, because of who he is, it exceeds 8 youth in there. They're coming from different, not just through reset.
Right.
It's a lot of youth that sometimes come to that.
Right,
boxing.
but I mean, just under your program
Under
is where
us.
I was saying, just
We-
under your program,
Yes,
I
ma'am.
just expected the numbers to be higher as well. Yeah.
Well, I'm sure Ms. Moon Reynolds, and then we can find some more money. That's the problem.
Yeah,
Get more
maybe
kids
even some of that
involved.
grant money.
Because we think it's critical.
Yes.
It's real critical, especially in light of what we see happening now. It's critical to get as many kids involved as we can,
This is not to say that we're not working with more than that number of kids. These are paid. This is for pay. We have to pay for those services.
Right.
But we do work with a lot more youth, especially coming through the library.
Yeah.
And we take them to the YMCA. There's a lot of youth that we work with. I guess we're using the term, when I look at mentoring, I'm thinking, okay, service referral, mentor for someone to actually work one-to-one with that youth. But we've worked with many, many more youth throughout this time frame other than what I'm reporting here.
Right.
That's paid. We pay that service. So hopefully that clears it up a little bit.
It does, 'cause I know you work with Mr. Powell and
Yes.
over at the Melrose Library.
Yes.
So I know you're active
Oh,
in there, but I was just looking at what you reported out over the summer months in that 6 weeks.
Yes.
And that's what I was just thinking, the numbers, could have been higher. Thank you.
Ms. Sanchez, John?
Thank you. Mr. Merchant,
Yes.
how many employees does the reset team have?
What did you say?
How many employees?
We only have one employee. We just hired Mr.
Okay, that's it. Okay.
Waddy. Yes.
And how well do you work with the court systems to
The
get,
court service union? We
to
work
get
really-
referrals?
We work really well together.
Okay, especially with students that are being truant, because I work a lot with those students. And
I came from there. I was a supervisor. I retired from there in 2020. I was a supervisor there, so I know most of the folks there. A lot of the folks I work with are transitioning out, but I have a good relationship with most of the folks there in the court services unit. And they also refer out, I'm going to put Mr. Roberts on the spot, but I guess I will. But they refer to him as well. They have similar services also. So they're utilizing a lot of some of the programs that we have in the community. There are other, as I said before, there are other providers out here that service the youth in various capacities. So I'm not the only one at this point. I'm just grateful.
Some of the subsequent slides cover a few of those other programs. This is really just capturing this reset piece of that.
Yeah.
thank you.
All right. Councilman Walsh.
Acting Chief Stokes, I know part of what we wanted to learn from this experiment over the summertime with the juvenile, what do they call it?
Curfew.
Thank you. Been a while since I had one. The curfew, we also wanted to see how much of our resources, our police resources were going to be used trying to enforce that. Is there any way to get that data, or is there a way to quantify how many hours an officer was working on these things? Just so that when we do this, we see, okay, it didn't work, but this is why it didn't, or this is what did do a good job. So, yeah.
Just thinking through that, it's a little different. Capturing officer time that is not written in a report is sometimes difficult to do, and determining when an officer's on a call and, who are they interacting with, again, unless there's a report done. And we don't do a report on every call that we go to. They go and handle and interact with folks and move on to the next one. So sometimes that's a little difficult. Let me talk to the analyst to see if there's any way that Mr. Reese can determine that right off the top of my head. I can't think of a way to do that.
Yeah.
It would have been, had we been issuing the citations to take them to court, or we were actually picking them up and taking them home rather than just doing a citation, or in addition to doing a citation, or in lieu of doing a citation, we would have that, but that just didn't happen. Again, we just didn't run across kids that, the situation matched the curfew. A lot of police action has to be reasonable and based on facts, and it's somewhat difficult you know, a 13-year-old, 12-year-old, you can certainly tell that they're 12 or 13. It is articulable. But when you're getting up to 15 and 16-year-olds, it is difficult to say you're 16 and you're 17 because at the point of being 17, then the curfew doesn't apply. So you know, to see somebody walking down the street, you think they're somewhere 15 to 18. That's not reasonable probably for an officer to be interacting with them. So we may have encountered folks, but just without, or seen them out, but we just don't know that they were violating the curfew.
So I guess I'll rephrase then.
Yes.
Did it cause any significant impact on the police at all to have this as part of
No, sir. You know, if I am certainly the interim chief, and just speaking from the interim chief role, then Chief Booth maybe have a different perspective, but he and I think a lot alike, and so, you know, it's a tool, and if you were to consider to, you know, reenact or expand the expansion, it's certainly a tool available to us. We are not the only locality to have that tool available to us, because again, you know, trends kind of shift. We saw a different kind of shift in age of people involved in 2023. So maybe we do want that tool available to us in the future, should again there be a shift where there's lots of juveniles involved in incidents that we would be concerned about, and have that tool available to us. So that would be my suggestion. Again, I think Danville has a very similar sort of ordinance in effect. It has been in effect for many, many years. So I would guess that Chief Booth, he and I have not specifically talked about that, would be probably a similar thought pattern as I have.
Yeah, I mean, we've had our curfew for a long time as well. I remember my brother
Right, but just expanded the age, the max age out a little bit when
absolutely.
you did this.
Thank you.
All right, I think Mr. Powell is next.
Thank you, Chief, and thank you. And
Yes, sir.
so we have the sunset rule, so it's no longer a curfew.
The curfew still exists, the original curfew, but that expanded age and time that you approved for the summer is now no longer valid. So again, if it's something that we want to visit next summer, we would certainly bring that back to you all at that point in time. So.
Okay, thank you. Thank you.
On behalf of the Star City Safe Initiative, once again, I want to thank Bob for his support and Angie for her leadership in this initiative. We're here today to address and update council on the summer activities Star City Safe Initiative. Representing libraries today for Sheila Umberger, we have Amber Lowry and Charlize Parker. They will be answering any questions that you have on the library. Michael Clark is out today, so we have Cindy McFall, who's our parks manager. Of course, you know Chris Roberts, and we're our game coordinator and violence prevention. He's here as well. And we have Bart Edwards, he's also here, and he was working with us on the academy that we held. I think they changed the name on me, so I've got to go back and look at, Save the Youth program. So he has some additional information if we want to share more about that program. So we're going to start with the libraries, and as you can see, this is their total, all 6 of the libraries in the city, and the type of activities that they conducted, meals served, and I know they were serving breakfast, and of course we did the meals at Melrose, and if you have more questions on that, but over 10,000 participated in the summer youth program, and they had their pre-COVID coming back, so that over 71,000 participate in the summer reading program. But I really like the 15,629 youth that participated and checked out a book this summer. So I remember that was a big thing in my house, get a book. Yeah. And also in the library program, and they have some robust programming. I mean, they had over 900 programs this summer for youth and families. As you can see, Williamson Road had the Read and Ride. You had the Kids Farmers Market. You had the Animal Encounters with Mill Mountain Zoo. And I believe that was at Melrose, correct? Yeah, I saw some children doing some serious running out of that room.
So Stories Under the Sky, and they had the mid-libs, American Sign Language class. They just do so much that I don't think people really appreciate all the work that they do in the libraries with children from various ages and teens and preteens. So I really accommodate them. That's been an eye-awakening experience for me. They also did something where I thought was kind of unique at Melrose, and that was called a Family Calf, Magic Calf Night, and the summer series program, as well as I think they did some poetry. Parks and Recreation, once again, Cindy McFall is here today, and I want you to pay special note to the fact that over 2,400 children used the Sun and Fun at Washington Park. I don't know how that compares to how many used the pool, but I do know those features were very well enjoyed by the youth this summer. Playpalooza was a first-time project with over 200 participants, and then they had the athletic camp at Lucy Addison, as well as Hoop Love dates. They do box fit as well, so I don't know the numbers, but they also did box fit as well through the library program. Through the parks program, and they ran Hoop Love July 17th through the 12th. And they had 12 participating in that program. But for the total summer served, there was 6,244. So it looks like between those two programs, we probably got close to 20,000 youth served just in parks and libraries. Also, Chris Roberts and his team, they ran Hoop Love Academy as well, and they did adult basketball. And over 122 teens and adults participated in that program. And one thing that Chris and I both realized was that was a safe place to play basketball. And that's why they had that number of participation throughout this summer. And then they did something what I think is something we need to look at more, is the Virginia Legacy Cheer Program. I think that was a novel project because we've been having challenges with girls and young ladies and preteens that maybe we should be sponsoring those types of programs more frequently. So some things that we are doing are things that we are testing. It's not that we've completed or that we've made everything exact. We're still trying to find our way. But that team, I saw some cheerleaders at Melrose, and they were from all ages, and they've been working well. But to have this, I think is something we may look at in the future.
Where was the Hoop Love Academy sports? Where was that held?
I know part of the Hoop Love was held at Eureka and then over at Forest Park. Is that correct, Chris? Yes. And was the Hoop Love that was done by Parks and Rec, where was that Eureka? Yes. It was at Addison. Okay. So it was right there, right in the core of what we're trying to reach, in the two areas of Northwest that we're trying to reach, that further part to Addison, and then we did some things up at Forest Park as well. So I think we've been hitting where we need to be as far as the youth activities. Okay. And then from the Star City Safe side, I just want to go back over something that Save the Youth program, and I have Bart Edwards here. We tapped into that program. They changed the name on it, made it more fan. Well, we started out with the 9 and 13-year-old. To answer your question, Councilperson, we did that to see if we could, what it would look like if we set up a small cadre of 6 or 7 students where they would be under supervision from 10 o'clock till 2, and that included lunch and a breakfast and hands-on hours. So when I say we ran 6 participants, that was over 200 hours of hands-on guidance and working with the students. And I'll be glad to bring Mr. Edwards up to talk about it. But also, we partnered with TAP, and as they already stated, we did work with Strokes of Genius as well with Mr. Pitzer, and they did an art program. But I hope that kind of answers what you're saying. Some of this is we're still testing. We're still trying to see what works and what that budget looks like.
And where did you, I saw your sponsors here on your 9 through 13 for this program with the 6 participants. Where did you get your participants from?
They were signed up for Melrose.
Okay, so
Branch
they came
Library.
out of, okay.
Right. And they were no older than, I think, the 7th grade. Or maybe we have an 8th grade? No.
So you just, in yours was a maximum of 6 participants?
Correct. Well,
So-
we would have taken more, Council, but that's all we could get. Some of this is the volunteering, signing
That's what
up.
that's what I'm getting at.
Yes,
is
ma'am.
Who came in and.
Yes,
wanted
ma'am.
to be a
And
part
some
of
of them also went to Apple Ridge, and some of them went to, the normal summer programs and out of town. But those are the ones we were able to get signed up, met with the mothers. I mean, Mr. Edwards did an extensive process. We did interviews. We tried to find out where they were in school. We knew the relationship they had with the library. So they came in the library at 10 o'clock in the morning. Ms. Bean made sure they had a breakfast or a meal. And then Mr. Edwards would pick them up and take them where they were going to go for the day. And then they would have lunch, and then they would come back to the library and have a snack, and they would complete at 2:30. So it was kind of like I guess it's kind of like being supervised all summer, right? It's just that, my mom wasn't there to make sure I went to summer school.
Right.
Okay, all right. So also, as you can see, we did instructional baseball, which is the first. We found it with Parks and Recreation, with Cindy and her team and Patrick Boaz, that we saw an opportunity and a weakness because we didn't have enough youth in activities in the summer. And that was something that was missing for 50, 60, 70 years ago in Roanoke, was they played baseball.
I was going to say, I was impressed with your number for the 25.
Yes,
on
that's
the
between
baseball.
two
I like that.
Right. But now for the fall baseball, we have 100 youth in instructional baseball, which it's a little bit different than leagues. Just think of you getting tutoring every day on baseball. You're not worried about a game or game score. You're worried about how to bat, how to hold the bat, how the ball comes in, how to feel. And the beautiful thing about that is you get a diverse group of coaches that just really want to work with these children.
Which is good.
Okay, so it's a little bit different than just having a team and a coach. It's more or less teaching you to prepare, because our vision is, and help me here, Bob, is we believe if we start this now with these younger children, 5 or 6 years from now, when they get to juniors and seniors, they'll be going and playing summer baseball, going to the summer leagues, going to the Legion leagues, doing other things other than just playing basketball, football, just hanging around the neighborhoods. So it's a little bit of what baseball used to be.
Because my kids played all the year. They played baseball, soccer, basketball.
Right. So those are the things we're trying to put in place. And then we did do, of course, we tapped into National Night Out, and that was most of the departments. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on that, but we had a lot of departments work with that program, and that was a partnership with Straight Street as well as Goodwill. And then the Young Docs program, of course, you're aware of that program, where we had 4 youth, and those 4 youth came directly from Mr. Murch's program. So it's some of the same children we identify, we're able to work with and develop a relationship and some level of trust. Because what we're finding is there's not a lot of trust out here.
That's it.
They're not trusting. So we were able to do that, and that's a program that's still going at this particular time. And that was a great partnership between United Way, Strokes of Genius, Elliott Majors, Melrose, Rugby Neighborhood Association, and my department all contributes financial support to help these youth in this program. Also, Peace on the Courts. As we know, we tried a project where Dungy. Mr. Dungy wanted to do some things on his own, so we trained and taught him how to get permits, how to get insurance, how to do the things that he could do. And I participated, I watched. So he had about 80 participants between those two activities, and he got support from Hill Street Baptist. Of course, my department provided some financial support as well as risk management. And then YMCA received funds from the city for the Beacons program that was held at Addison, and that was a pretty robust program. Looks like they had a good turnout, and that's over 3,400 hours. And then we did the back-to-school haircuts. I put the wrong name in there. It should be First Impressions on Melrose. They participated and ran that activity, and they provided 75 youth, 150 youth, or about 75 hours of contact. And we had great support from internally, Ross, from Public Works. We even got some support from a family friend and director of Department of Housing and Community Development in Loudoun County, contributed, as well as my department contributed financially to support the barber. So we made some inroads, and it's something we would like to do further. So once again, some of these are still just tests.
Because I do know that on the back-to-school haircuts, there were other agencies along with the city that was providing the haircuts as well, which I think is a good thing for the young man. But I noticed there's nothing for the girls with hairstyles.
They had hairstyle, but I did not get their numbers.
Okay.
They had, I think the hairstylists are on the other side, and they were doing girls' hair, but I didn't get the hair count. And my concentration was more, financial support was more on the boys' side. But we did have young ladies as well. I can get that number.
Well, it's good to know that you were.
They had it. That was a part of the 20th anniversary.
Okay,
And then the last slide, of course, is tapping into what took place, the YHQ. They had a summer program, youth leaders with TAP, summer work program. And that was the City of Roanoke and Greater Roanoke Workforce Development. So that was still city funds supporting these work activities. And I think you still have to give some credit to Bob and Angie for getting these out and then creating these activities. And of course, the AHQ had a youth center and a campus and STEM camp and summer camp this summer, where some of the youth out of the Melrose group participated in that for another total of 92. So I think we had an active summer and a supportive summer. And I appreciate that, and I'm prepared to have everybody ask any detailed questions that you may have.
Thank you, Jeffrey. Part of this was to show, obviously, the curfew piece was, of course, the stick that was out there, and this was kind of the carrot to keep youth engaged and involved. And as Jeffrey has mentioned, this is just what the city and their partners were doing. There are a whole host of other private partners that are doing things through the summer, and this was really partly in response to sort of the challenge that you all had presented at one of the, I think it was during one of the curfew discussions, which was to move beyond this notion that there's nothing for youth to do in the summer. I think the city staff and their partners stepped up to demonstrate that that just was not accurate, that all of these programs were there. We had active participation, and as Jeffrey's mentioned, many of these, we always ramp up in the summertime, but many of these programs continue on throughout the year, so these don't go away. We're obviously still doing the library programs. Obviously, Chris and his folks and Lloyd and their folks are continuing to work with youth that will benefit from these programs. So wanted to kind of share that with you along with the curfew information to kind of show both sides of that piece. Thank you.
Great presentation. Thank all of you all. And it's good to see Amber there. I will always remember her because she helped me navigate the Chicago airport and the Denver airport, or I would have been a lost guy coming back. When we went to get the All-American Award, she had to navigate me. And on the plane, where my seat was. It was bad, man. But Amber, it's good to see you. But thank you all for all you do. We appreciate that, and it's making a difference, and we've just got to keep working. All right, we're going to have to call for a recess for I'm hoping for about 30 minutes, and we need to go to a press conference that's going to be held up at the police station. So thank you all, and we'll continue that. And I'm going to, Mr. Spencer, I'm going to just call for a recess until we get back. All right, council will be in recess until about 4:30.